Why is online dating such a daunting task for so many people today?
All of these online, there's 1,400 online platforms. So whether it's an app or a site, there's lots of them. I went into his profile, which is horrible for a guy who's, oh my God. And his photos were even worse. The men think all the attractive women are taken, though the women think all the good men are married.
The man was always kind of expected to do the courting or make the first move. And so you had to get in front of a woman and actually talk to her.
Like, what's with those fish pictures? Or taking a selfie in the mirror and thinking that's like art or something. I don't know what they're thinking. Here's women writing this like long list of what they, want in a man or all about themselves. And you know what the men are interested in?
Online dating is extremely popular today, but it comes with its own unique challenges. And our guest today is known as America's premier dating expert. She's the founder of 33,000 Dates, a personalized online dating site that is custom tailored to each individual who signs up. We're happy to have with us America's premier dating expert, Andrea McGinty. Andrea, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mike. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. You got a great book, and I appreciate you providing us with a copy, and definitely pulled some things out of that. And I wanted to start just from ground zero. So, why is online dating such a daunting task for so many people today?
I work primarily with, I started my career over 35 years ago, in my 20s, with founding another company. And, after selling that, segued into online dating and when it became very popular. And part of the reason it's daunting, it's not daunting. Like I look at my children that are all in their like 20s, they're like, oh yeah, mom, we're on Hinge and Bumble and Raya and Tinder, like they grew up with this stuff. Now you jump forward to the 45 to like 69-year-old crowd. They did not grow up with this. So that's the people that I work with, and they didn't grow up with the tech. Plus, they never intended to be single at this age either. They may have, walked down the aisle when they were, I don't know, 25, 28, and they weren't saying, oh wow, I can't wait to do this again when I'm 55, and how do I even do this, and what's the world like now? And so it's really tough for that older age group to meet people, because when you think about it, when you're in your 20s, you're meeting the majority of people, maybe college, maybe grad school, maybe the workplace, and you still think the bars are fun and going out with your friends, is fun. And it's a whole different story once you hit, 50 or 60, because that's not what you're doing. And you start to feel like very isolated and very much like, oh, all my friends are married. So how do I meet somebody?
Yeah, and I've been married many years now. I've shared that on previous episodes. Happily married, mind you. Um, but it just seems like from somebody who's on the outside looking in, it seems to me that online dating would be easier because, back when I was in the dating scene, would have been probably like I guess early to mid 90s. There wasn't really online dating. So you had to meet people. So the man was always kind of expected to do the courting or make the first move. And so you had to get in front of a woman and actually talk to her. And so for a guy like me who lived through that experience in that era, to think of online dating, it seems like it's easier because you don't have to go to that trouble, but it seems to come with its own challenges. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Oh, I totally follow what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, if I could just back up in time a little bit to the 90s, because it sounds like you and I are on the same page age-wise.
Yeah.
So the 90s dating, how I got into this entire, business, it was never something I dreamt up, or, I dreamed of or thought, this is going to be my career. I mean, I'm an accounting and finance major,
Mhm.
and which I've never used, by the way. And so when it was 1990 and I was getting married, I was early 20s, and my fiance called it off 2 days before the wedding.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, ugh. And I was living in Chicago at that time, a young, vibrant city, but still, it's, how do you meet people, through friends, et cetera. And I was thinking to myself at that time, after I got through the tears and all that stuff, after getting dumped,
Mhm.
I thought to myself, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. I'm not into the bars anymore. I'm not into this. And the biggest thing to remember here is there was no Google. There was no online dating.
Mhm.
So anyone younger listening, that did not exist. So we were on our own. So hence, that's how I came up with the idea for It's Just Lunch, which is which was a dating service I founded in 1990 to help people meet, and it worked very similarly to an executive recruiter. Executive recruiter calls you with professional opportunities. It's Just Lunch would call you with personal opportunities. Men that we think you might like, women that we think you might like, and so forth and so forth. And it took off, and by the time, if we fast forward 15 years, uh it had 110 locations internationally. It was doing really well, uh but personally, I saw the writing on the wall that now online is kind of coming into its own. It's still chaotic, it's still messy, and and so is the internet. Like there's those scams and all that junk going on. But it was getting better. So shortly, thereafter, as I'm thinking about this stuff, I got an offer from two companies to sell It's Just Lunch, and one was Match.com, and the other one was a private equity group in New York. And at that point, I had my youngest daughter, and I thought, you know what? Time to sell. I think I'll just hang out, travel. I've done pretty well, and that'll be my life. And so I did sell out to private equity, but. And I did travel and I did have a blast for a year. But then what happened was I got a phone call, and it was from somebody that I was very close to who had just gone through a divorce. He was doing online dating and he was having a horrible time. And so I said, okay, Jim, what site are you on? Let me take a look. And it basically said, give me your password and your login. Let me see what's going on there, because I knew this like the back of my hand. I grew up not just with It's Just Lunch, but with online dating.
Yeah.
And so I went into his profile, which is horrible for a guy oh my God. And his photos were even worse. And here's a guy who's a CFO. He's good looking. I'm thinking, what is he thinking? Why did he post this stuff? Men are so dumb on the internet.
What kind of
So,
stuff did he post without, like, revealing too much? You're
oh,
piquing my
yeah,
interest here.
he has like some, like shirtless photos of himself, lifting weights. And like, we don't care. Women don't care. That's like a turnoff. Or like sitting in his car with a selfie, like, we don't care. Or holding a fish. Ugh. None of us like, what's with those fish pictures? Or taking a selfie in the mirror and thinking that's like art or something. I don't know what they're
But
thinking.
everybody does that now. I don't do that. But everybody
Oh,
the mirror selfies, like, that's all I see online.
Oh, well, I pray I'm helping to change that world, because that's my mission now. So anyway, I work with him, and like 2 weeks later he goes, "Oh, Andrea, I'm getting great dates now. Thanks, whatever you did,
Wow.
it worked." And so it just kind of took off word of mouth, and that's how I started 33,000 dates, because at that point in my life I'd set up over 33,000 dates, and I'd had over 10,000 marriages. And I loved what I did. It was so much fun. And, it's easy for me. It's just like I've got this thing where, a good radar for people and what's going to work. So, so now, it's like 2010, 2015, and I'm doing 33,000 days. And now all of these online, there's 1,400 online platforms. So whether it's an app or a site, there's lots of them. And what I noticed right away was, okay, first of all, they're getting better. Some of them, the top ones are getting a lot better, and they're more secure and they're more credible. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Um, but I also, I also noticed that people, the biggest mistake they would make was trying to choose. So, all these 1,400 choices are in front of you. You pick the wrong one, you're dead in the water. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just dead. And you're discouraged and you're on there for 2 weeks and you quit. And that is the biggest thing with online dating. People quit after 2 weeks. That's just the way the ball bounces.
Hmm.
So I started working with people and really helping them figure the whole game out. And it's partly it's a numbers game, and partly it's depending on you, what you're like, and what part of the country. Part of the country plays a huge role for, I like to call them second acts. So these are people, in their second acts, 40, 50s, 60s, that are doing this dating thing again. And of course, what do they think? The men think all the attractive women are taken, though the women think all the good men are married. Not true, not true.
Hmm.
And so the problems they really had was number one was picking the right site. So I knew the sites very well, and I'm very strategic. I'm a business person. Uh, so my strategy was I use Pew and Gallup and a couple of other research companies that most people don't have access to because you have to pay them a lot of money.
Hmm.
Um, but I could basically, take someone like you, Mike, and plug you in
Hmm.
and, say, this is his age, this is his education level, this is what he's looking for. This is his zip code, etc.
Yeah.
And it's going to, shoot me five choices of what are going to be the best sites or apps to be on. So, okay, we've crossed the first hurdle. We found the right site. Yay. Okay. Because a lot of times people just pick sites ad hoc. It'll be a woman in New York meets her boyfriend, and her best friend lives in Dallas. And the woman in New York met through Coffee Meets Bagel. So the woman in Dallas is using this site called Coffee Meets Bagel, and I'll be like, why are you using that? She's a new client of mine. She goes, because my best friend met her boyfriend. I go, guess what? Nobody in Texas uses that site. It's just not popular there. So, you're not going to do well with it. So there's regional differences with these dating sites too.
I didn't realize
Second,
that. I just assumed they had a footprint in every major
nope.
city. Really interesting.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
It varies, varies dramatically by the part of the country that you're in. And then the next thing is profiles. You have to have a profile online,
Hmm.
and men don't like to read. So here's women writing this like long list of what they, want in a man or all about themselves. And you know what the men are interested in? Your pictures.
Yeah.
They want to see your pictures. So that goes to the second thing that I work on with people, and both men and women. You've got to have great pictures. This is a visual medium. You have to have great photos. So I would say about 80% of my clients, I end up sending them off to a professional photographer.
Really?
Oh yeah, really, but not
Wow.
for like, not for a swirly background behind them
Yeah.
or a LinkedIn shot, but okay, so you're really into canoe racing, or you're into pickleball, or you're into tennis, you're into golf. We want some real shots of you doing what you really do.
So they're
And
not
that,
headshots. They're like action shots? Is
yeah,
that really?
you want action shots. One headshot you need. You do
So why
need
don't
one
we like the
headshot.
weightlifter?
Oh my
That's an
gosh,
action shot.
It was if he had a shirt on. Come on. Okay. The only time I'm okay without the shirt is like somebody water skiing. I mean, because that's an action shot. I get why you don't have your shirt on. Okay. Yeah, I get it. But no, 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 no. Yeah. Keep that shirt on, boys. Yeah. So, really getting those good photos is majorly key. Then we jump to the next thing. So now we've got the right site, we've got the right photos, we've got a great profile that I've written for them, and it's short and sweet, and it's
Mhm.
unique too. It's not a list of what you want in another person. It's very much of a just giving them a little taste of you with
Yeah.
maybe one or two interesting facts about yourself, to entice them a little bit more. Okay, here's the big one: messaging. That's what comes next. And people in general are awful at this messaging part. Reaching out to another person online. Either I get the people that are like sending hearts and likes to men, which the men are like, "Oh, okay, she liked me or hearted me or winked at me or she did whatever to me, but no message. So now she kicked
Okay.
the ball back in my court, right?
Yeah.
Now I have to do all the work. So,
That's what I was getting at earlier, Andrea, is that like back in, back at before online, I felt like men had to do most of the initiating. So it's kind of backing up my point, right?
yeah, oh, it's totally backing up your point.
Mhm.
And where I get the pushback are women, like I would say in their 50s. They're like, "Oh no, I'm online now. He should pursue me." And I said, "Well, you're just going to sit there for 3 months and nothing's going to happen." Because you have to, we are equal. This is not the 1950s. Come on, let's go. Let's
Yeah.
send him a message. And not a generic message like, "Hey, how's your Sunday?" or "Hey, how's your weekend?"
Mhm.
Those are, a
Yeah.
dime a dozen. I mean,
Yeah.
it's got to be personal. It's got to be, maybe they had an interesting, photo. I had this one guy on Wall Street. He's like a Wall Street guy, and he's got his suit on. He looks perfect. And there he is juggling pomegranates. And that picture got so many, like women engaged with. I mean, that was just a great picture.
Yeah.
This good looking guy, he's juggling pomegranates. I mean,
That's
Wall
funny.
Street, you always think they're kind of reserved
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I'm all about making money. No, this guy had his pomegranates in his hand. Um, so, so sending the right kind of message. And that's where I spend a lot of my time with clients. So besides, picking the right site and picking their photos and picking the right profile, the messaging is super important. That you're saying something unique and interesting, and it's short. It's like 2 or 3 sentences max. And I can tell in just a second if it was like a cut and paste. They're using the same message for all the women, or the women are using the same message for all the men.
Chat
So,
GPT probably
oh,
using AI.
you know what? We could talk about AI a little later, because there's
Yeah.
some good things and there's some bad things about
Mhm.
AI, and how people tend to use it. So the messaging is really key. And then the other issue that comes up is that people think they're in a relationship when they just start sending messages back and forth.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, I'll be talking to a client. I talk to my clients once a week. We do a coaching call. I'm on the same dating platform as they are, and I'm helping them pick out, high potential men or women. And I'll have, a woman being like, "Oh, Andrew, there's this great guy. I really like him. I've been telling my friends about him." And I'll say, "Oh, so how many dates have you gone on?" And they'll say none. And I go, "What do you mean none?" She goes, "Oh, look at our chats. What we're talking about.
Mhm.
I go, "No, that's not a date. That is not a date. You've got to stop that texting and get get on with this. I mean, he's 15 minutes away from you. You need to meet him in real life. This is the whole goal of this whole thing, is, meeting in real life." And okay, so one like little comment aside here is, I've been following this Stanford study that's been going on for about 22 years. And here's what it says: From the time you see somebody online that you're interested in and you reach out to them to the time you actually meet him or her, if it goes more than 5 days, you have a 10% chance of the date really happening.
Okay.
So think about that. You're going to lose 90% of these people because it goes fast online. It
Yeah.
goes really, really fast. So, the way it would go between you and me, I'd send you a message, you'd send me one, I'd send back, you'd send me one back. And
Yeah.
then I would say, hey, Mike, how about we meet on Thursday or Friday for a drink after work
Mhm.
at a Bistro 110? I'm not much of a texter and I'd love to meet you in real life.
Yeah.
And boom, now we've got a date,
Right.
right?
Within
And
that 5 day window. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we don't need to go on and on with this thing online. And it even gets worse with my like 60 something year old women because they really want to just sit online and, wait for these men to, come knocking on their doors. And I'm like, mm-mm, not going to happen. You've got to reach out too. It's
Yeah.
equal opportunity here. So that's what I work with, and it's really fun. And I think what they're getting out of me is two things. They're getting a cheerleader to keep them going
Hmm.
because there's so much rejection online, and second, they're getting accountability too, that they know once a week they're talking to me, and they better have done their homework because I give them a little bit of homework each week, which is like a half an hour, 3 times a week, where I make them do X amount of messages to men online because otherwise they just scroll aimlessly and
Yeah.
nothing ever happens.
There's too many choices, probably. I mean, when you're, it's when you're online, the options are probably endless. And so people can't even narrow their focus. But I want to go back to something you said because I've heard this before, Andrea, and that is just that these connections seem to go nowhere and people just perpetually text online through these apps and platforms. What do you think the cause of that is? Do you think, like, as a culture, we're just so comfortable in front of screens now that we don't want to be in front of people or physically present with them? Because I've heard that that's a complaint of women that are on online dating platforms, that the men don't initiate any kind of let's get together, let's meet, let's have a coffee, lunch, dinner, whatever, walk in the park, doesn't matter. What do you think that is? Like, why does it go nowhere? Why do people just want to stay online?
Well, you know what, I think it goes back to a little bit about what I was saying. Let's get over that the man has to make the first move. And I'll give you a personal example with me. I could give you a ton of client examples, but I'll give you one with me. I was married for 24 years and then divorced, and for 4 years before I jumped back into dating, and I did online dating. And my first week, I reached out to five different. Well, actually, I don't remember how many I reached out to, but my first week, I had 5 dates. I had 5 lunch dates,
You talk
and
about
I
that in
did.
your book, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you
Yeah.
read it. Oh,
Yes.
wow. Okay. So,
Yeah.
I went on 5 dates that first week. Um, that's too many to go on, by the way, everybody. That's stupid. Because my
Yeah,
head
that's a
was like
real
spit.
marathon. That's a
Yeah,
lot to
that
take
was
on
like,
mentally.
oh, you know what? Because I couldn't even
Yeah.
remember what we talked about and stuff. But
Yeah.
you know what? It got me back into self confidence that I still, I have confidence, but my self confidence came back with dating really fast when I realized after date number one or date number two, wow, I can still talk. I
Mhm.
can still be fun. I can still be entertaining. And I enjoy listening to another person and meeting another person. But every single one of those dates, I reached out to them and I made it really easy for myself. And I picked the same place for all 5 dates.
Okay.
By date three, the hostess was like, "Okay, Andrea, your date's at the bar. This one's cute."
I was gonna say, did
So
the staff start to notice you?
oh yeah, they're like, "This one's cute." I'm like, "Oh, good, yay." Um, so I don't understand the mindset. Men find self confidence in women sexy.
Mhm.
They do.
Yeah.
And why do you guys have to do all the work? There is absolutely no reason. So that's the pushback I get from women. And for the most part, there's no pushback from men because they like it. They don't feel like, ugh, I have to, pick the place. And with women, I'm like, and be very specific. Um, I can meet for either brunch or a late afternoon drink at like 4 o'clock on Saturday. How about Bistro 110? And then you're giving them a which. You're giving them one to choose.
Yeah.
And you're going to know very quickly by their response, they pick one or they suggest another date, or they're like, let's text a little more. Ha! Let's text a little more. You're gone, dude.
Is that
Goodbye.
is that what that typically means?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you fooling around? What are you wasting my time online?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. So you shared some already, but I mean, talk about some common mistakes. And I want to get more into 33,000 dates. But talk about some common mistakes people make when they begin online dating. You talked about bad pictures. You talked about, women in the case of trying to present something to men, they might have too much information. And you say men don't like to read. That is typically true of a lot of men. So, what are some common mistakes you see from either gender?
I see, and now we're talking more about my like New York, LA crowd. Though I see it in the rest of the country too. It turns into an interview style of a date where, I mean, could you imagine? Okay, just think about this. Could you imagine being at a cocktail party? You're there for some reason. You're there with your wife. You're mingling, and somebody says to you, "So, what's your goal in 5 years?" Would you think that's a weird question?
I don't know if I do.
I do.
I mean, really? Why? Now you
For a
tell
first
me.
date? For a first date or a first meeting? What's your goal in 5 years? Yeah, I think it's an executive recruiter question.
Yeah.
Um, because it's too heavy, it's too deep. Um,
But I
but
mean, do you
another
think at this stage in our lives, because you and I are not 20 though, do you think that's a more pressing question that people in our age bracket dating might want to know that? Like we're in the red zone for retirement age,
Right,
right?
right.
So
Yeah.
is that and push back if I'm wrong, but is there not some validity to that question? It might be weirder to somebody in their 30s. What do you think? Am I
Mhm.
wrong?
Yeah, I think you're wrong.
Okay, okay.
I think it's not a good opener. I don't think it's an
Yeah.
appropriate first date question. I
Okay.
mean, I think first dates should be talking about um
It does seem
it's,
formal. I'll give you that. It seems
it's
very formal.
and not fun and
Yeah,
not
no, it's not fun.
it's not fun, and it's like a I would
Yeah.
just gulp if somebody asked me that question. Where do I want to be in 5 years? Married to you? I don't know. What's my answer? Um, um, and I just think there's so many more things that you can talk about
Yeah.
because you've read this person's profile. They're into, maybe they're into mountain climbing or then scuba diving or whatever they're into, books. Maybe they have a large family. Maybe they don't.
Yeah.
But talking about family is really normal on the first date. How many kids do you have? Because a lot of people have kids. Where are your kids? And then it just segues into it's a warm up. It's a conversation warm up that's really, really easy. Okay, another question, that a mistake people make. You know what? I hate online dating, and I have been having a horrible time. How's your experience been?
So you're
Oh,
just
they
coming at them
say
with
that.
negativity. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
they say that. Oh my gosh, my dog's looking at me right now, and she's like, "Oh, that's horrible, Mom." Um, yeah, but they'll say things like that, and I'll be like, "Oh my gosh," the if I was on the other end getting that question, thrown at me, and this is
Mhm.
what I advise people to say is, you know what? It's been going great. I've met so many interesting people. I just haven't met the one yet.
Right.
Because now you sound like, oh wow,
Yeah.
you're popular and you're having a good time and you have a good attitude. But that's a good way to weed out negativity too. If somebody
Mhm.
brings up something like this, or they say something like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. All my friends. Oh, or another thing is venting about politics. No, and I'm not even going to touch that one right now. Venting about your ex. You know, my ex, we were in a custody battle for 5 years. We paid the attorneys X amount of money.
Mhm.
It was horrible. How was your divorce?
Oh, geez. Yeah.
But really? I
Yeah.
mean, what's wrong with you? No, those aren't things we talk about. So, and it's funny because how they're leaving themselves so vulnerable, and it's negative. I almost think, anyone who comes to me, by the way, they look at my website, they sign up for a 15-minute call with me.
Mhm.
That 15-minute call is really a pre-screen for me to know if I want to take them or not. And I
Oh,
ask
so
them,
you'll actually reject people?
you bet you I do.
Really? Interesting.
Because
Okay.
I will say, one of the questions, we'll just be talking generally. They're telling me, their background, their history. Maybe they were widowed 4 years ago or 2 years ago. Okay, let's use the widow example because you know what, it happens to us in our 50s and 60s. I'll say something like, so since being widowed, have you dated at all? Oh, I've gone on a couple of dates. Are you able to go on the date and not, because it sounds like you had a great marriage, and not talk about her? And he goes, no, I seem to keep talking about her. I really loved her. We were married for a long time. And at that point, I'll say, you know, I think you should give yourself a little bit more time. Just don't use me yet. Um, maybe just try dating on your own a little bit more, or doing things with your friends. But you're not ready. Okay, another example: the divorced people. Okay, if I get somebody on the phone, and I haven't even asked that question yet, uh, and I'll just be like, "Tell me about yourself." And well, I got divorced 4 years ago. It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. And sometimes, Mike, I just go, "Are you in therapy?"
Mhm.
And a lot of times they say yes.
Yeah.
And I say, I'm thinking to myself, thank God. And I said, I'll ask this question: does your therapist know you're calling me?
Mhm.
And if they say yes, I'll say, what does your therapist say? Um, and it'll be one of two answers. And they do ask their therapist. The therapist will say, no, you're absolutely not ready to date. I wouldn't call her yet. Or yes, I think you are ready, but you just got to, stop the ranting about, the ex-husband. Um, and then if they say no, they're not in therapy, but they're doing a lot of ranting with me, I suggest it sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe just give yourself a little more time to heal and grieve and stuff. Or, maybe have a therapist first. I mean, I
Mhm.
say it very nicely,
Yeah.
and I'm not a therapist by any means, but I want people that are going to have a good shot of meeting people.
Mhm.
So if they need a little more time, take it. Take it because you want to be in the best shape. Now, my book goes through, it's got, you have the book,
Mhm.
it has 15 worksheets in it. And that's one of the first ones, which is, what's your mindset? Where's your head at?
Yeah.
And answer those questions. And once you put it down on paper and you're writing it, with a pen, you're not typing it in the computer. You're writing it with your pen, which really engages you into this question. Uh, you're you're really looking at it, hopefully as objectively as you can,
Mhm.
because it is about you. So it is kind of hard to be objective. But you might come to the realization that I've got a little work to do, or
Yeah.
maybe I'm not quite ready for this. Because I ask, can you go on a date and not talk about your last relationship that ended? Because obviously, if it ended, it wouldn't have ended if it was an amazing relationship,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So something went wrong there.
Yeah.
Um, So that's the very first worksheet, in the book, and I think that's really, really important. The very last worksheet in the book, I really like people to buy the book first, and a lot of people do before they come to me, because they'll see how I work and that I'm very direct, but kindly direct, graciously direct. I'm not going to be their best friend. I'm going to be their coach. Just, like you have a football coach or a yoga coach. I want you to get this stuff right. And so the very last worksheet is a business plan for your personal life. And that one gets a lot of people laughing, like, I'm not doing that. That you're taking all the romance out of it, Andrea. And I'm like, no, read the sheet and just answer these questions. Like, what side am I going to go on? What's holding me back? What barriers to entry? What am I really looking for? And do not give me a list of 10 things you're looking for. Give me
Yeah.
three things that you're looking for. And really, once you write it down and start thinking about it, I think that puts you on a really good pathway to a very high chance of meeting somebody. And right now I'm about it kind of goes up and down, but between 65 to 70% of my clients end in long-term relationships or marriage. One of the two.
So clearly
So,
your screening's working then. 'Cause you're
yes,
yeah,
yes.
that's great, Andrea.
Yeah, well, I don't want to take their money if they're not ready,
Yeah.
because if they're not ready, they're not ready.
Mhm.
And it's just better off for them to give them a little more time. And then when they do come online, yes, they'll be nervous, but they'll also be kind of excited too.
Yeah. You mentioned this earlier, and it's in your book that you were married for 24 years and then you went through a divorce and then you took some time for yourself. You described it as taking some time to get to know yourself and just being, with your kids and kind of going through that process and taking your time to do it. Talk about that because clearly if we come out of a long relationship or somebody comes out of a messy divorce, there needs to be some time for self-reflection. And you talked about that.
Right, right. I do think you need some time for self-reflection and just thinking about it. And I have always been somebody who works very, very hard. And I mean, obviously, you don't build, you know, 110 locations without putting in, a lot of sweat, blood, and tears, right? And I wanted to have some time with the kids while they were still young, and do some traveling. But one thing I did do, which kind of worked the opposite of how I thought it was going to work. I went to this church that had what was it called? Like grief or bereavement. It was for divorced people or widowed people, and they had it once a week at night. I only went once, and there were probably 12 of us in the room, and I'm sitting there, like, people are going around and they're telling their stories, and I'm listening and I'm listening and I'm listening, and I'm thinking, Andrea, you have it so good. My divorce was pretty amicable. Uh, the kids, I hope, were minimally affected. And it really made me realize that I have a pretty darn good life compared to, some people that I was listening to in the room that, they were struggling with some really big stuff, with spouses that had cheated on them, or
Mhm.
spouses that had, gone bankrupt or hidden money and stuff. And I didn't go through any of that stuff. And I walked out of there and I felt very lucky,
Mhm.
very, very lucky. And I don't want to say happy, because I don't, because, I don't want to wish those people bad
Yeah, I
or anything,
understand.
but
Yeah.
but I just thought, geez, I am really, really lucky. Mine went the way it did. Um, but at the same time, I wasn't ready to date. And plus, am I going to bring a man around, preteens? Not a good idea.
Yeah.
And I watched somebody, I have six younger brothers and sisters. I watched somebody in my family do that exact same thing. And what it did to the kids, this like parade of men in and out
Yeah.
of her life, and the kids meeting them, and not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, Mike, what it was, but I just woke up one morning and went, I'm ready.
Mhm.
Like and the day before, if you had told me I was going to do that, it was just boom, something in my head. And of course, in the interim, I'm doing all this stuff I'm telling you about, 33,000 dates, coaching people, helping people. But, I wasn't really focusing on myself. And, maybe a little bit I was living vicariously through my clients too. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, but I did take the time to like sort my head. I got during that time period I got yoga certified. Uh, not to, I never became a yoga instructor. I just wanted to get better at yoga. I
Mhm.
took some like classes that I would have never been able to take had I been, still married and still, running a company. And by the time, those years passed by, or especially that first year, once that first year passed by, like, I don't know, kind of sounds corny, but it was a little bit of a like cleansing of the soul, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big change. Some people describe a divorce as like an amputation, like you lose part of yourself through that process. And so I can't imagine f- I can't imagine somebody getting divorced and going on a date like the next day, like once the divorce is finalized. I mean, just on that whole notion, do you think that's one of the things that makes online dating so hard is just the fact that a lot of people in on those platforms aren't ready to be dating or are coming out of something messy? Do you think that's one of the issues that come up?
I, I don't find that to be super prevalent,
Okay.
where people are jumping right on. Now, where I see it more, it's not the divorced people, it would be the widows. Like somebody who had a great marriage, and forget what I said earlier about talking about, their former spouse on
Yeah.
the date,
Mhm.
but a man who's had a great marriage and he was married 30 years and a lovely marriage, a lot of times they will come out of the gates fast because they knew what love was like. They had a great relationship, and all they're expecting from online dating is another great relationship.
This is
Because
men primarily, you're
this is
saying?
men.
Okay.
Yes, this is men because that's been their only exposure. That they had a happy marriage.
Yeah.
So they're ready to go, and those men get, you know they meet somebody very, very quickly. And it turns into something, whether it's, just an exclusive relationship or a marriage or something. So that's not uncommon. Uh, you really want to look at the person, because one of the boxes almost all the sites make you check off is, why are you here? And it could be, and here's some of the answers: for friendship, to date a lot, to find a relationship, to find a serious relationship, to get married. So you'll check one of those boxes, and I find people for the most part are truthful.
Mhm.
And that would be a big red flag for if I'm working with a male client who's definitely ready, for a deep relationship, and he stumbles upon a woman who says only friends or just date a lot. She's just come out of something and she's probably not going to be ready. So that would be probably a red flag, maybe an orange flag, but more so a red flag, I'd say.
Okay. So take me through 33,000 dates. How does it work? There's an intake process where you screen who you think is a good candidate for dating. You turn people
Right.
away. What happens after that?
Oh, then it's fun. Okay, so the first thing that happens is they fill out some paperwork and we do a Zoom call. And I spent an hour with them just talking to them about what they're looking for, what happened in the past, what we want to avoid, what their hobbies are, all that kind of stuff. We talk about all that. Okay. Um, At the same time, they send me all their photos. And I'll look very quickly at those photos and make a call right away that, and I've got photographers all over the country. Um, you need to go get professional photos. And that's what I say 80% of the time to people. You need professional photos. Okay. So what happens to me next is I sit down and I start writing their profile. And and as I said earlier, it's, short, it's unique, it's fun. So it'll be, some fun facts about this person. And then in the interim, my client is, getting new photos taken. I'm approving the photos. And I also talk to the photographer on the phone too and say, you know, these are his interests, and this is what I want some good shots of with him. Like his
So they go
dog
like
isn't.
reenact stuff? Is that what they do?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Go in your. I said to this one guy, Jonathan. I go, I don't need you out on the golf course. You have a beautiful backyard. Just take your golf club out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, because shows this guy plays golf four times a week. We don't need him out on the golf course because that'll waste like a half an hour of the photographer's time.
Yeah.
Um, so we reenact some of those photos. Then once I've got it all put together, so I've got the profile, I've got the photos, I've chosen the site, based on research. Now I go online and populate the site we've chosen, whether it's Match.com or Bumble or Hinge or Our Time, whatever it might be. I'll go online, I'll populate the site for them. Then what happens next? I tell them we're not going to talk for 3 or 4 more days because I want to see what comes in,
Mhm.
and what kind of people come in.
So you're
And
monitoring their account, their Match.com
Mhm,
account or whatever.
mhm.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I tell them, number one, don't be scared of the people who like you, because anyone in the world, somebody will say to me, I got like 4 men in India that liked me. And I go, well, anyone can like you. But then there's 3 other columns where I set up the searches and the algorithms. So we're filtering out all that stuff.
Yeah.
We're going with a mile radius. We're going with
One
a certain
mile?
education. No, no, not
Oh,
1 mile.
I was gonna
No, no.
say.
I put in a mile radius,
I
a
got
mile
you.
radius.
I was gonna
It
say
depends.
1 mile. That's a small circle.
Oh, no, 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 no. It totally depends. Like where I'm sitting in Palm Beach right now, Florida, I would probably put in a 40-mile radius. So we're
Okay.
picking up Boca and Fort
Yeah.
Lauderdale and Miami
Mhm.
too. Um, I'll put the algorithms in. I'll put our search criteria in, and then we have our first coaching call. And on that coaching call, I'm teaching them. Okay, they're going to be overwhelmed. Like the first time, they're like, oh, oh my gosh.
Mhm.
And the first thing I'll do with them, I'll take them to the search column on whatever site. Every site has it. Every app has it. And I go, let's look at the search and look at the people that have come up that look like there's some, compatibility here.
Mhm.
And then I start to learn very quickly what you find attractive, or what she finds attractive, because you're picking off these little tiny pictures initially
Yeah.
before you click on them and open up their whole profile. And then I'll go through their profiles. I'll go through the profile with them, and as I said earlier, I'll see a red flag in like 5 seconds flat. They
Mhm.
won't because they're brand new, and I'll ask, and I have a rating system, 1 to 100. Okay, give me a rating on this guy, and she'll say, nobody's going to say 90 or 100 because that's basically you're going to walk down the aisle tomorrow. Nobody's going to say a 0, but 50 is kind of the midline. So anything above a 50, we're going to send a message to. So if she says, I think he's about a 65, I'll be like, okay, okay. He gets a message then. And she goes, really? I go anything above a 50, we've got to have parameters here.
Yeah.
So she is going to send him a message. And it's not going to be a message like, hey, let's have a date.
Hmm.
It's going to be information gathering. Like, let's get a little more info. He mentioned a couple things he really likes. Let's ask him some questions and then let's share something about you that's not on your profile. And then watch if he responds back. And you know what else we're looking at? We're looking at grammar. That's a biggie. Grammar. You know what? Don't use, a little I for saying I. You
Hmm.
know, use your head. You're not texting with your kids. You're texting with a brand new person, and you always want to say, hi, Mike. Thanks so much for the like. I really loved the picture of you and your grandchildren. Adorable.
Hmm.
Do they live nearby? Da, 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 da. So, okay. And then you're going to sign it, warmly, Andrea. So none of this, like, and that's just for the first message because
Okay.
you're acknowledging the person's name and you're saying your name. And the following messages won't have that. But, so, okay. So I tell people as we're going through that process of elimination, or we're sending, so anyone who falls below a 50, I ask them, what are we going to do with him? Oh, maybe I'll look at him again. No, you won't. We already rated him below a 50. We don't have time to look at him again. Delete, 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 delete. Oh, this one looks good. Okay. What's his rating? Oh, I'd give this one an 80. Okay, we're going to send a more thoughtful message, than somebody who ranked a 60. So and then and I told, as I mentioned, only 1 in 5 people write back. So you've got to do the numbers too. It's got to have those numbers. So each time they go online, I only let them go online for 30 minutes. And I tell them they must have sent, and they have a tracking sheet from me, they must have sent 5 messages. And then it helps me because send me in real time the tracking sheet and I can see what they said. And some people have trouble, writing these messages. And so, I'm just constantly trying to help them improve their messaging so we're turning into dates.
Yeah. And how long can this process go on? I mean, when is it? Obviously, it's finished when they meet somebody and they want to get off the platform, I'm assuming. But can this drag on for weeks, or do you just create such a razor sharp focus on the kinds of things they're looking for that you find them somebody rather quickly with your expertise? How does all that work?
Yeah, it depends. It depends. I have 4 different packages. So one's for a month, one's for 2 months, and one's for 3 months.
Okay.
I would say do the 3 months. Commit mentally to 3 months,
Hmm.
because I can't tell you how many people it was like their 17th or 18th date where they met the person they ended up with. So you can't give up too soon, and that's where a good dating coach comes in
Yeah.
handy because it's just cheerleading you through the process because you know uh, I remember sending a message to one man who I thought was like perfect for me, and he didn't write back. And I think I have pretty thick skin, but obviously I don't, because I was like, what is wrong with him,
Yeah.
that he didn't write me back? He's perfect. And then I was like, shake it off. That's stupid.
Hmm.
He didn't write me back. He didn't write me back. There's thousands more out there. So, if I could sell thick skin, I'd be a billionaire. But, I mean, we do take this
Of
personally.
course.
It's
Yeah.
it's personal. It's part of our life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great thing you got going there. And we have to come to a close shortly here, Andrea, but plug your book, Second Acts. Tell everybody how they can get a copy of it.
Okay, well, this is my baby. Second act, winning strategies for dating over 50. And the funny part about it is I've got some book clubs that are using it right now, women in their 40s, women in their 30s. Um, what I like about it is there's no BS in it.
Hmm.
I'm not writing it from a psychological standpoint. I'm not a psychologist. It's strategic. It's like follow my steps and you're going to have success. You are going to have success. Do the worksheets. Oh, what I add into the worksheets too, on each worksheet, there's a QR code. So you snap the QR code with your camera, and you get me for 5 minutes talking about on video um, what you should be thinking about as you fill that worksheet out.
Okay.
So I think it's really helpful. I mean, the book is available everywhere. I
Okay.
would say go get it on Amazon. They have
Okay.
the best prices.
Okay.
It's in the indie bookstores, but get it on Amazon.
Okay. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And Andrea McGinty, thank you so much for spending time with us. This is a lot of fun.
Ah, thanks. My pleasure. I had fun too.
And that'll do it. We are out of here, and we want to hear from you guys. How has your online dating experience been? Has it been worthwhile? Good experience? Bad experience? Drop us a comment. Let us know. And always check out our latest at mikecpodcast.com. Until next time, bye, everybody.